In the winter of 1943, metal was rationed for the war effort. You could not buy fishing lures. The factories were making bullets and shell casings, not tackle. My grandfather's grandfather, a Norwegian fisherman who settled near Duluth, had to figure out how to catch walleye without any of the equipment he brought from the old country. So, he did what his ancestors did during the famines in Scandinavia. He walked into the woods, pulled up a plant that grew everywhere, crushed it between his hands, and rubbed it on a carved piece of wood he shaped with a pocket knife. That night, he caught more walleye than the entire neighborhood combined. 80 years later, that same plant still grows in every backyard in Minnesota, and it still catches fish better than anything you can buy at Bass Pro Shops. I know this because I watched an 83-year-old descendant of Norwegian immigrants absolutely destroy a group of modern walleye fishermen using nothing but a weed from his garden and a technique that predates the entire American tackle industry. If you are tired of corporations selling you high-tech solutions to problems that were already solved by people who fished through actual hardship, subscribe to this channel immediately. We exist to resurrect the methods they buried so you would keep spending money you do not need to spend. His name is Oskar Lindgren, third-generation Norwegian American. His family came to Minnesota in the early 1900s when the iron mines were still booming and Lake Superior fishing could feed a family through the winter. Oskar learned to fish from his grandfather, who learned from his father, who brought the techniques from the fjords of Norway where people fished for survival, not sport. I met Oskar on a cold October morning on Mille Lacs Lake. The water was gray, the air was sharp. There were 4 boats out on the lake already, all running modern walleye setups, planer boards, bottom bouncers, lead core line, spinner rigs with Colorado blades and scent-infused soft plastics. These were serious walleye guys. They knew what they were doing. They had been on the water since before dawn, methodically working the deep structure where walleye hold in the fall. Oskar showed up around 8 o'clock in a 14-foot aluminum boat that looked like it survived the Korean War. No electronics, no electric trolling motor, just a small outboard, 2 rods, and a canvas bag. He motored out to a shallow flat that most walleye fishermen would ignore completely, killed the engine, and started setting up. From his bag, he pulled out a handful of wild yarrow. The plant looks like Queen Anne's lace. White flowers in flat clusters, feathery leaves, grows everywhere in Minnesota. Most people think it is a weed. Oskar crushed the entire plant in his hands. Stems, flowers, leaves, everything. Crushed it until green juice was running between his fingers. Then he took a plain gold hook with a white twister tail, the kind you can buy for 39 cents at any bait shop, and rubbed that crushed yarrow all over it. Soaked it. The plastic turned green from the plant juice. He tied it to 6-pound monofilament. No leader, no fancy knot. Just a basic clinch knot my kid could tie. He cast it out into about 12 feet of water, let it sink to the bottom, and started a slow retrieve. 3 cranks of the reel. Pause. 3 cranks. Pause. 2 minutes later, his rod tip dropped. He set the hook. A walleye came up thrashing, 22 inches, thick shoulders, marble eyes. He unhooked it, put it on a stringer, reapplied the crushed yarrow to the same lure, and cast again. The boats with all the modern gear were still working the deep water. I could see them running their electronics, adjusting their planer boards, switching out lures. In the hour I watched, none of them caught a fish. Oskar caught 7 walleye in that same hour. The smallest was 19 inches. The biggest was 26. Every single one hit that same white twister tail, soaked in crushed yarrow juice, and every single one came from water shallow enough to see the bottom. Here is what the scent companies will never admit to you, because their entire business model depends on your ignorance. Walleye hunt primarily by vibration and smell. They have a lateral line system that detects movement in the water, but in low-light conditions or murky water, they rely almost entirely on chemical detection. Their olfactory system is incredibly sensitive. They can detect individual amino acid chains at concentrations measured in parts per billion. Yarrow, the plant Oskar was using, contains a compound called echelene, along with a dozen other volatile organic chemicals. When you crush yarrow, you rupture the cell walls and release these compounds into a liquid medium. Echelene has a bitter, slightly astringent quality. But here is the critical part. It mimics the scent profile of injured baitfish. When a baitfish gets wounded, it releases amino acids and stress hormones into the water. Those chemicals create a signature that predators evolve to recognize. Yarrow produces a chemically similar signature. Not identical, but close enough that walleye interpret it as prey in distress. Add the visual trigger of a white lure moving erratically near the bottom, and you have created a hunting scenario that walleye cannot resist. The scent industry knows this. They have been studying plant-based attractants since the 1970s. But they cannot patent yarrow. They cannot charge $18 for a 2-ounce bottle of something that grows wild in every ditch and vacant lot in North America. So instead, they synthesized similar compounds, added stabilizers and preservatives, packaged it in fancy bottles with fish on the label, and convinced you that the natural version does not work anymore. Oskar's yarrow trick is not new. It is not innovative. It is older than the United States. Norwegian fishermen were using yarrow and other wild plants to catch cod and mackerel in the North Sea centuries before Bass Pro Shops existed. The knowledge survived because it works. And it works because the biology has not changed. Walleye respond to the same chemical triggers today that they responded to 1,000 years ago. Let me give you the numbers, because this is not nostalgia. This is documentation. Oskar fished for 3 hours and 22 minutes. He caught 16 walleye, all keepers. The smallest was 18.5 inches. The largest was just under 27. He used one lure the entire time, a white twister tail that probably cost less than $1. The only thing he changed was the yarrow application, which he reapplied every 5 or 6 casts. The modern boats on the lake that morning? I talked to 2 of them at the landing. Best result was 3 fish. One guy caught 1. The others got nothing. They were running electronics that cost more than Oskar's entire boat. They were using lures that cost $8 to $12 each. They had scent products from Berkeley and Northland fishing tackle that promised scientifically proven attraction. Cost breakdown is even more absurd than usual. Oskar's yarrow, free. It grows behind his garage. The lure, under $1. Total investment for a 16-fish day, less than $1. The tournament-style walleye anglers, between the lures, the scent products, the replacement spinner rigs, and the fuel for the big outboards, they probably spent $150 that morning to catch a combined total of 4 fish. This is the fundamental scam the fishing industry runs on you. They took ancient knowledge that worked without any commercial infrastructure, buried it under decades of marketing, and then sold you expensive substitutions for things that used to be free. They convinced entire generations of fishermen that success requires technology and chemistry and constant equipment upgrades. But the actual science supports the opposite conclusion. Fish are simple. Their sensory systems are ancient, and the things that trigger feeding responses have not changed since long before humans figured out how to write any of this down. Oskar does not guide. He does not compete in tournaments. He does not have a social media presence. He fishes the way his grandfather taught him, using materials that cost nothing and methods that do not require a PhD to understand. The tackle industry would go bankrupt if everyone fished like Oskar. That is exactly why they spent 50 years making sure you forgot that people like him exist. If you want to try this and stop wasting money on scent bottles that contain synthetic versions of something you can pull out of the ground for free, here is how you do it. Pick a handful. You want the whole plant if possible. Stems, leaves, flowers. The more plant material, the more oils you extract. Take it with you to the water. When you are ready to fish, crush the yarrow in your hands. Really mash it. You want the juice. You want the green liquid running out of the crushed stems. Then take your lure, whatever you are using, and rub that crushed plant all over it. Soak the plastic. Coat the hooks. Get it everywhere. Cast it out and fish it however you normally would. For walleye, Oskar fishes it on the bottom with a slow, steady retrieve. The crushed yarrow releases its scent into the water as you work the lure. The oils spread. The chemical signature disperses. Walleye detect it, track it, and when they find the source, they hit. Reapply every few casts. The plant juice washes off in the water. You want to keep that scent fresh. But you have unlimited free material. You can reapply as many times as you want. You do not need a lab-formulated product. You do not need scientific endorsements from pro anglers. You do not need the tackle industry's permission to use a plant that has been catching fish since before your great-great-grandparents were born. You just need to stop believing that new means better and expensive means effective. Oskar has been using Yarrow for 60 years. His grandfather used it for 50 before that. His great-grandfather used it in Norway before the family ever came to America. It worked then. It works now. The only thing that changed is how much money someone convinced you to spend on substitutes. If this is the kind of content you are here for, subscribe. Leave a comment and tell me about any old-world fishing tricks your family brought from another country or passed down through generations. Let's preserve this knowledge while we still can. The tackle industry wants it extinct. That is precisely why we are documenting it. Now go find some yarrow and catch some fish without spending a dime.